So, you know how sometimes it feels like the world's just changing incredibly fast, almost
Yeah.
sprinting ahead?
Yeah, it's almost dizzying, right? You look around and boom, something else is different.
It really can be overwhelming. But it's interesting, this feeling, this kind of rapid change, it's not entirely new, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
History is full of these periods where technology just flips the script on how we live and work.
Yeah.
The industrial revolutions are like the classic examples.
Absolutely. And if you want to understand our modern world, our economy, you really have to go back there.
Uh-huh. It wasn't just about new machines. It was a fundamental reshaping of production.
Okay.
And that had these huge ripple effects.
Okay, so let's dig into this because industrial revolutions, plural, it sounds like one big event, but the sources we looked at, they really emphasize two distinct phases, almost like waves.
Precisely. Yeah, you've got the first industrial revolution, which really kicks off in Great Britain, maybe mid-18th century, around 1750 or so.
Right.
Then later on, mid-19th century up to the early 20th, you get the second industrial revolution. And that one spreads out more. Europe, the US, even Russia and Japan get involved.
And it wasn't just happening in different places, the tech was different too, right? The fuels, the engines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different power sources, different key technologies driving things forward.
Okay, so for you, the learner listening in, think of this as us kind of peeling back the layers on this really pivotal time.
Yeah, we want to see how these technological leaps really changed manufacturing, how people lived, even how we connected across huge distances.
We're looking for those key moments, those aha insights that show how the world we know today started taking shape back then.
And it often starts with energy, doesn't it? That initial shift in fuels and engines really set the stage for everything else.
So let's start right there. First industrial revolution. What was the fuel that really got things going?
That'd be coal, primarily coal. Our sources really stress this because,
Okay.
well, it burned much, much harder than wood.
Which was the main fuel before that, yeah.
Right. And this intense heat was crucial for the defining engine of that era, the steam engine. You know, the one James Watt famously improved and made practical.
Ah, the steam engine, iconic image. So how did it actually turn coal heat into power?
Well, the basic idea is simple enough. You burn the coal to boil water, lots of it.
Okay.
That creates high-pressure steam. And this powerful steam is then channeled to push a piston back and forth or spin a turbine.
Like a high-tech water wheel almost, but driven by steam.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And that motion, that rotation, could then be hooked up to run machines in factories, allowed for production on a scale nobody had seen before.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me, because before steam, factories needed rivers, right, for water wheels. They
Yeah.
were geographically tied down.
Exactly. That's why the steam engine was such a massive game changer.
Mhm.
Suddenly, factories weren't stuck by the water. You could build them closer to coal mines or ports or maybe where the workers were. This freedom, it completely changed the map, concentrating industry and people into these new, growing cities. Urbanization really takes off.
A huge shift from the older agrarian way of life.
Totally different. And the steam engine didn't just stay put in factories, did it?
No way. It went mobile.
Yeah.
We're talking transportation revolution here,
Locomotives, engineers figured out how to put steam engines on wheels, creating railroads.
which could suddenly haul all those factory goods inland much faster and in bigger quantities than, like, horses and carts.
Absolutely. And the same thing happened on water. Steamships, they made ocean trade way faster, more predictable, more efficient.
Which then created its own needs, right?
Yeah.
Places for these ships to refuel.
Yep, coaling stations started popping up all over the globe, strategic spots along trade routes.
And something like the Suez Canal opening in 1869, that must have turbocharged steamship travel.
Oh, massively. Cutting that corner between Europe and Asia saved so much time, made the world feel, well, smaller, and boosted trade even more.
Okay, so that's the first revolution. Coal, steam, factories breaking free from rivers, railroads, steamships. Then the second industrial revolution gets going, and the fuel changes again.
That's right. Now we see oil becoming much more important. A new primary fuel source rises.
And with oil comes a different kind of engine.
Yes, the internal combustion engine, specifically designed to run on refined oil products like gasoline.
And our sources say this one had some advantages over steam.
It did. Critically, it was much smaller and generally more efficient for its size, better power-to-weight ratio.
Which made it suitable for things steam engines were just too bulky for.
Exactly. It wasn't maybe as immediately revolutionary for factories as steam was, but its potential was huge. It directly led to the development of the automobile.
The car. Amazing to think its roots are right here.
Yeah. And, we should acknowledge With both coal and oil now being used on such a massive scale, the amount of energy available to humanity just skyrocketed.
Unprecedented levels of power.
Definitely. But as the sources also note, this came with a cost. Air pollution, especially from burning coal, starts becoming a really significant issue, an environmental consequence we're still grappling with, obviously.
Right. Okay, so beyond the new fuels and engines, the second revolution also brought big advances in materials and other tech. Steel seems like a really key one.
Oh, absolutely central. And the breakthrough there was the Bessemer process.
Remind us how that worked.
Essentially, you take molten pig iron, that's basic iron, and you blast compressed air through it.
Okay.
The hot air reacts with the impurities, especially excess carbon, and burns them off.
Yeah.
What you're left with is steel.
And this Bessemer steel was different, better.
Much better. It was significantly stronger than the wrought iron used before, more durable, you could shape it more easily, more versatile.
And crucially,
Crucially, it became way cheaper to make in large quantities.
so suddenly you could build bigger, better things out of metal.
Exactly. Think massive bridges spanning rivers, think thousands of miles of railroad tracks, larger, stronger ships. Steel became the backbone of modern infrastructure. You could literally see the change in the landscape.
Wow. Okay, beyond steel, chemical engineering also took big leaps. Things like dyes and rubber.
Yeah, really interesting developments there. Synthetic dyes, for example. Before this, colors for clothes came from plants or minerals, kind of limited.
Right.
Suddenly, chemists could create this huge range of vibrant, long-lasting colors in the lab, revolutionized textiles.
And rubber, what was the big deal there?
Well, natural rubber is kind of sticky and melts easily,
Hmm.
but the process of vulcanization, heating it with sulfur, makes it much harder, more elastic, resistant to heat and cold. Suddenly, rubber becomes super useful
Useful for what, specifically?
in factories for things like drive belts connecting machines. And later, absolutely essential for tires on bicycles and, of course, those new automobiles. Got it. Okay, and then there's electricity. One source called it arguably the most significant tech of the whole era. That's saying something.
It is a bold claim, but you can see why. People like Thomas Edison figured out how to harness it reliably, make it practical. The incandescent light bulb is the famous example.
Changed everything, didn't it? Factories could operate around the clock. Homes weren't relying on gaslight or candles anymore.
Completely transformed daily life and work. But electricity wasn't just about light.
No. What else?
Think transportation within cities,
Mm-hmm.
electric streetcars, and eventually subways. They offered efficient mass transit for these rapidly growing urban populations.
Allowed cities to sprawl even further, connecting neighborhoods.
Exactly. Helped manage the scale of these new megacities.
And finally, we can't forget communication, the telegraph. Seems almost quaint now, but back then.
It was revolutionary. Samuel Morse, the 1840s, sending electrical pulses over wires. Morse code.
The first time humans could communicate almost instantly over long distances. The Victorian internet, sort of. You could say that. And a huge milestone was laying the transatlantic telegraph cable in the 1870s.
Connecting Britain and the U.S.
Yeah. Imagine the impact on business, finance, news. Getting information across the ocean in minutes instead of weeks. It massively boosted the economies of both countries.
Okay, so we have all this incredible new tech, steam, oil, steel, chemicals, electricity, telegraph. What were the big effects on how the world worked, how people lived? Our sources talk about opening up interior regions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. For centuries, most development, most trade happened near coasts or big rivers, right? Easy transport.
Made sense.
But railroads changed that completely. Think about the Transcontinental Railroad across the U.S. or the Trans-Siberian in Russia. These lines cut right through vast interiors.
Allowing people to settle there, farm, get resources out.
Precisely. Areas that were incredibly remote suddenly became accessible, integrated into the national, even global economy.
Right.
Railroads were like arteries pumping life inland.
That's a great image, and you combine that physical connection with the instant communication of the telegraph.
And you get a much more responsive global market. A factory owner in, say, Manchester could get telegraph updates on cotton prices in Egypt or demand in New York, almost in real time.
Allowing them to make smarter decisions, produce more efficiently.
Exactly. It helps synchronize supply and demand globally, leading to a huge increase in trade.
Which brings us to another major effect. The sheer increase in trade and also migration.
Oh, absolutely. Massive increases in both. The sources point to global trade multiplying several times over between roughly 1850 and 1913. The world economy was becoming incredibly interconnected.
And people were on the move, too, facilitated by these new trains and steamships.
On an unprecedented scale, first, you see that huge internal migration, especially in Europe in the mid-19th century.
You mentioned this earlier, people leaving the countryside for factory jobs in the cities?
Yeah, over half the population in some places.
Mm.
A fundamental reshaping of where people lived and worked.
Wow.
And then later in the 19th century, you get this enormous wave of international migration.
People leaving Europe.
Millions. Nearly 20% of Europe's population emigrated, mostly to the Americas, but also Australia, South Africa.
Driven by what? Famine, like in Ireland? Political unrest, just seeking better opportunity.
A mix of all those things, yeah. Complex push and pull factors. But the key thing is, the steamships and railways made these long, arduous journeys feasible for ordinary people in a way they never had been before.
So these technologies weren't just changing economies, they were literally moving populations around the globe.
Leaving a huge demographic footprint that we still see today.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. This deep dive really shows the Industrial Revolutions as this period of incredibly rapid, fundamental change.
Absolutely. You have innovations in power, coal, steam, then oil, internal combustion, innovations in materials, steel, rubber.
Plus breakthroughs in harnessing electricity and revolutionizing communication with the telegraph.
And all this fundamentally changed how things were made, how economies worked, how societies were organized.
Moving from localized, mostly farm-based life to this interconnected global industrial system.
Right. And accompanied by these massive movements of people, both within countries and across oceans.
It really laid the groundwork for the world we inhabit now, didn't it?
You can draw direct lines from so many of these innovations to our current technologies and societal structures.
Which really gives you something to think about, doesn't it? For you, our listener, maybe consider those ripple effects. How do the choices made, the technologies developed back then, still shape our energy use, our cities, our work today?
Yeah, and maybe think about the parallels. Are there similarities between how transformative things like steam power or electricity were back then and the impact of, say, digital technology or AI today?
Definitely some food for thought there. A fascinating period with lessons that still resonate.